On August 10th, 1985, an 18-year-old Rebecca Schaeffer woke up in her New York City apartment to the news that 13-year-old peace activist Samantha Smith had died in a plane crash. How could Rebecca have known that this tragic event would ultimately lead to her death a few short years later at the age of 21?
13-year-old Samantha, America's youngest goodwill ambassador, was killed in a plane crash, along with her father and 6 others.
She did capture a moment in history and stole a little piece of our hearts. Last night, America's peace missionary and her father were killed in a fiery plane crash, later described by Samantha's mother as a pile of ashes. Eyewitnesses say that
when Samantha Smith died, so did her stalker's obsession with her. A few months before Samantha's death, her stalker, John Bardo, took a bus from his home in Tucson, Arizona to Maine to try and speak to Samantha. The police stopped him and immediately put him back on a bus to Tucson. Bardo then turned his attention to Rebecca, who he stalked for the next 3 years. In 1989, 4 years after Samantha's death, Bardo boarded a bus headed straight for Rebecca.
Death has come to your little town.
Rebecca aspired to become a rabbi before discovering modeling her junior year at Lincoln High School in Portland, Oregon. In 1984, at the age of 16, Rebecca somehow convinced her parents to let her move to New York City by herself to pursue a modeling career. I know that sounds crazy, letting your kid run off to the big city at that age, but I had a similar experience. When I was 16, my parents let me move to LA for a month my junior year in high school. Unlike Rebecca, my acting career never really took off, and I don't understand why.
You killed him! No, look, you don't understand, right? Why?
Living in New York City was a dream come true for Rebecca. She chose adventure over regret, something her father stressed to her all throughout her childhood. New York can be a scary place, especially for a 16-year-old girl in 1984. But Rebecca was no ordinary girl.
Here's what to do when you don't find the rainbows in.
Shortly after arriving in New York, Rebecca landed the role of Annie Barnes on the ABC soap One Life to Live, my mom's favorite soap. I watched OLTL religiously with my mom from the age of 5 until I moved to LA. I even remember Rebecca's character.
It's not like we know each other real well or anything.
Annie, I mean, come on, would you get yourself together? I mean, aren't you liberated or anything?
Liberated enough to tell you where you can get off, buddy!
Who knew what horrors awaited the both of us? For me, it would be my mom's death, One Life to Live's biggest fan. And for Rebecca, it would be her own death, at the hands of her biggest fan.
Lay that pistol down.
In 1986, Rebecca won a small role in Woody Allen's Radio Days.
Beware, evildoers, wherever you are!
Unfortunately, Rebecca's performance was ultimately edited out of the film. A brief scene featuring Rebecca is all that remains. Rebecca didn't let the chop get her down. Rebecca was way too busy booking modeling gigs and holding down a job as a waitress to make ends meet. The girl was not about setbacks. Shortly after Radio Days, Rebecca landed the cover of 17 magazine and catches the attention of producers casting a new sitcom called My Sister Sam, starring Morgan Mindy's Pam Dauber.
Hi, I'm Patty Russell, and this is my sister Sam. I just moved in. We haven't lived together since we were kids. I was raised by our aunt and uncle. Yeah, things sure have changed. I used to dress her. I can't wear this out in public. This makes up for the haircut you gave me when I was 3.
Rebecca won the coveted role of Patricia Patty Russell, a teen who moves from Oregon to San Francisco to live with her 29-year-old sister, Samantha, after the death of their parents. Like her character Patty, Rebecca moved from her beloved New York City to the palm tree-lined boulevards of Los Angeles. It was totally worth it. Going from a daytime soap to primetime was unheard of at the time. Rebecca was perfect for the part of Patty. She was a mix of youthful radiance and dizzying charm.
I kind of get a kick out of having my kid sister live with me. I mean, of course, it has its disadvantage.
Curfew. Patty Russell is hyper, smart, 16, and she wants to be different, but she wants to fit in like any normal teenager.
The series was a huge hit. Rebecca was even on the cover of TV Guide, which at the time had a circulation of like 40 million subscribers.
How could you let her take the TV Guide?
11 minutes before the hour right now. There is a brand new face on television this year, an awfully successful new face. The sitcom My Sister Sam has worked out very well indeed for Rebecca Schaeffer. It's the highest rated new series on CBS, and the network has now renewed it for next year. You gotta be happy you're on television with My Sister Sam.
Yes.
It's like a skyrocket for your young career, isn't it?
It's gone great so far.
Life isn't this good. I must be dreaming.
She was dreaming, and Rebecca would soon have to wake up from this dream. Due to bad ratings, My Sister Sam was canceled halfway through season 2 in April of 1988. It was a major disappointment for Rebecca, but she was determined to move forward. At the time of the cancellation, Rebecca was living in the pool house in the Brentwood home belonging to her co-star, Pam Dauber. Pam lived in the main house with her husband, actor Mark Harmon. With the cancellation of the show, Rebecca thought it was high time that she find her own place. So she rented a two-door-style apartment in the Fairfax district of West Hollywood. The place was a dream. It was perfect for her, other than the broken call box at the front door. Anytime anybody rang for Rebecca, she'd have to come downstairs and let them in. This would ultimately prove Rebecca's undoing.
Back in the summer of 1986, when I was watching TV shows like Magnum PI, the commercial for My Sister Sam came on, and that's when I first saw her. That's what got me curious about her. And then I'd watch the show, and she's very outgoing and bubbly and everything.
Robert John Bardo wrote dozens of letters to Rebecca, smoke signals from his parents' home in a treeless subdivision in Tucson, Arizona. One of his letters got answered.
Robert, your letter was the nicest and most real letter I ever received.
Look, Sam, a letter from E.E.
The first time I saw her answering fan letters, she said, look, I'm getting fan mail, and it's great, and they're telling me their problems, and I'm answering them back, and it's really fun for me, and they want to be friends. And I went, wait, they're not your friends.
Summer of 1987, I took a plane there to the Burbank airport, and then it took me, I took a taxi, and I rented a weekly hotel, and I tried to see her at the Warner Brothers studios.
San Diego Freeway northbound around Culver City, Westwood in the Beverly Hills. You've gone Hollywood.
Here I am at Forest Lawn Cemetery, situated across the street from Warner Brothers Studios, where Bardo's obsession turned to stalking. Bardo was carrying an oversized teddy bear and flowers when he approached the front gate on foot. He was hoping to meet Rebecca on the set of My Sister Sam. He informed security that he was an old friend of hers, but security wasn't buying it. The head of security escorted him off the premises.
I said, pack up the teddy bear, the flowers, and Bardo, and bring him to my office. I want to talk to him. I told him that I thought the best thing he could do would be to go back to Tucson, where he came from.
The Jack Egger who testified at Bardo's trial is also the same Jack Egger who was one of the last witnesses to have seen Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, alive. Just days before her gruesome murder, Jack, who was 19 at the time and working as an usher at CBS Studio, escorted Elizabeth and an unidentified man onto the lot to see the Jack Carson show. In 2003, Egger positively identified that unidentified man as Dr. George Hodel, one of the main suspects in the unsolved murder case of the Black Dahlia. Even though he was kicked off the lot, Bardo wasn't about to take no for an answer. Bardo returned a month later to the Warner Brothers lot, but this time, he was carrying a knife. Luckily, security was able to stop him from gaining access to Rebecca, but none of this was ever reported to the police.
No question about the fact that Robert Bardo could have been prevented from killing Rebecca Schaeffer.
Go home.
And I was just frustrated, and it hit me hard because I wasn't expecting that. And I didn't understand it. It made me feel bad.
Defeated, Bardo returned to Arizona and loses interest in Rebecca.
He secretly stalked singer Tiffany. He spent the night at Debbie Gibson's high school. A midnight vigil on the sidewalk where John Lennon was murdered. The anatomy of Hollywood's worst nightmare.
But I would urge any celebrity to watch out.
The Hollywood Stalker, the trial of Robert John Bardo.
Who was Robert John Bardo?
He filled out partial sentences indicating that his mother and father have frequent arguments, that there are times he wishes he were dead, that his family causes him pain and suffering.
Bardo, the youngest of 7 children, had a troubled childhood. He was sexually abused by one of his siblings and placed in foster care after he threatened to commit suicide.
Sometimes he would be so upset that he would just put his hands in his head and moan.
At 15, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and institutionalized for a month. Bardo ran away from his first foster home and tracked down Samantha Smith, the peace activist, in Maine, before being put back into foster care. He ran away once again and was placed in a psychiatric hospital. After he was discharged, he was placed in yet another foster home, and you guessed it, he ran away. Bardo worked for a while as a janitor at Jack in the Box before becoming obsessed with the teen pop star Debbie Gibson. In 1985, he took off to New York City to track down the teen queen. Rebecca was also living there at this time. While Bardo was there, he visited the spot where Mark David Chapman killed John Lennon. Like Chapman, and possibly because of Chapman, Bardo was obsessed with the book The Catcher in the Rye. It was on him when he killed Rebecca. On the cusp of manhood and going nowhere, Bardo wrote page after page of letters to Rebecca, detailing his chaste devotion to her. And in one unnerving passage, he explained, "I'm harmless, you could hurt me." That's some real psycho stuff there. Bardo was well aware of his transition from fan to fanatic. He even told his sister, "I have an obsession with the unattainable, and I have to eliminate something that I cannot attain." In the 18 months prior to Rebecca's murder, Bardo had been arrested 3 times on charges that included domestic violence and disorderly conduct. Bardo's neighbors also stated that he had exhibited unexplained strange and threatening behavior towards them. One neighbor even described Bardo as
a real psycho guy.
Mom? How long is that thing going to be tomorrow? I told Mimi I'd go to the beach with her.
Darling, that thing is your father's wake, and you will be there, and you will like it. Look.
Sorry, Mother. I know you humped out what's left of your scattered brains with Juan last night.
Bardo truly lost it after watching Rebecca in the movie Scenes from the Class Struggle of Beverly Hills. In his words, she had lost her innocence and became
another Hollywood whore.
Does this mean that I'm not a virgin?
I feel myself changing already. I know now. My whole life has been a preparation for this journey.
The film was a catalyst for Rebecca's murder. 1 month later, Rebecca would be dead.
I know what you were doing.
What Bardo was doing was having his brother buy him a gun.
Had he ever indicated to you a desire to take the gun to Los Angeles on previous occasions?
In a roundabout way, yes, he did.
Did you become aware at some point that your brother was interested in the actress starring in My Sister Sam?
Yes, I did.
After being turned away by Warner Brothers security not once, but twice, Bardo gets the idea to hire a PI from Arthur Richard Jackson, who had stalked and stabbed actress Teresa Saldana in 1982 after he had hired a PI to find her home address.
A man saw me in a film called Defiance.
Yeah, the Teresa Saldana case, I read about that in People magazine, and that's where I got the idea to hire the private investigator.
On March 15th, 1982, Jackson attacked Teresa in front of this West Hollywood apartment building in broad daylight, in the same West Hollywood neighborhood where Rebecca would be murdered 7 years later.
On March 15th, 1982, actress Teresa Saldana was viciously attacked and repeatedly stabbed.
And get this, years later, Teresa relived the incident in a made-for-TV movie, Victims for Victims, the Teresa Saldana story. Teresa played herself. It's harrowing to watch.
Are you Teresa Saldana?
He stabbed her in the torso 10 times with a 5.5-inch blade, nearly killing her. His attack was so fierce that the blade bent. Although there were many nearby onlookers, including children, the attack was only interrupted when a delivery man intervened after hearing her cries. He rushed from the second floor of an apartment building and subdued Jackson. Teresa recovered after 4 hours of surgery and a 4-month hospital stay at the Motion Picture Hospital. And get this, Teresa reenacted the attack again in a 1980s police drama called Hunter. Sadly, Teresa died in 2016 at the age of 61. 6 weeks before Rebecca's murder, Bardo walked into the Anthony Agency, a Tucson private investigator who advertised their ability to find missing persons.
Can you tell me approximately how many contacts you had with the defendant pertaining to locating Rebecca Schaeffer?
About 10.
Bardo told the private investigators he had hoped to reconnect with an old friend. Bardo was carrying a folder of letters from Rebecca, as well as a glossy headshot her fan club had sent him. Bardo paid the PIs $250. It was relatively easy for them to track down Rebecca's info. In 1989, it was totally legal for someone to pay the California Department of Motor Vehicles a nominal fee for the personal information on someone's driver's license. And that's just what the private investigators did. Little did Rebecca know, her time was running out.
Most guys who fantasize about seeing their favorite celebrity, you know, and this was it. It's just me and her, you know, talking to her, you know.
On July 18th, 1989, Bardo was seen wandering around Rebecca's neighborhood wearing a yellow shirt and carrying a plastic bag. That yellow shirt would soon be stained red in Rebecca's blood.
He was acting a little strange. He was patting a bag and he was kind of just moving his head up and down.
Inside the plastic bag was a card from Rebecca, Rebecca's headshot, a copy of the book The Catcher in the Rye, because why not, a gun, and hollow point bullets. You see, Bardo had heard that victims don't stand a chance. The hollow point bullet explodes inside their intended target. Bardo stopped several of Rebecca's neighbors, flashing them her headshot in hopes that they would point him in her direction. Rebecca was upstairs in her apartment, reading through a copy of the script for The Godfather 3. Everyone in town wanted to read it, and a messenger had just hand-delivered the screenplay to Rebecca. She was due to audition for Francis Ford Coppola himself later that day for the part of Mary Corleone, a role that surely would have changed Rebecca's life. While Rebecca was upstairs flipping through the script, Bardo was outside her building chasing after the messenger who had just delivered the script.
He asked me if I had just delivered to the apartment building.
Rebecca Schaeffer's building?
Yes.
Did you answer him?
I believe I said something like that I didn't want to answer any more questions.
You see, Bardo had Rebecca's address, but he didn't have the apartment number. Lucky for Bardo, Rebecca's last name was listed on the call box. Bardo rang Rebecca. Seeing as the intercom to the building was broken, Rebecca had to come downstairs if she wanted to see who was at her door.
And then I look, I see him down the hallway. It's her.
Rebecca, dressed in a bathrobe, graciously shook Bardo's hand and gave him an autograph. Bardo told her that he was one of her biggest fans, and she politely told him to take care of himself before closing the door.
So I introduced myself, I'm Bardo, she's on her celebrity. I said, you know, I'm a fan of hers, you know.
After meeting Rebecca, Bardo walked along Beverly Boulevard and had breakfast at Jan's restaurant, which used to be situated behind me and it's now a Chipotle. Bardo dined on onion rings and cheesecake, and he read through The Catcher in the Rye. Bardo later told detectives that it was at this breakfast when he realized they had forgot to give Rebecca a letter he had written for her.
I figured since I was there, you know, I could ask her, you know. Just go back to her place and ask her, you know, and give her that letter, you know. Plus, in case there was an excuse to bring her to the person who could talk with, you know, so she came out just like before, and it's hot.
After he was done eating, Bardo went into the restroom and loaded the gun. On July 5th, 1957, actress Gail Russell crashed her car into the front window of Jan's. She was photographed by a Los Angeles Times photographer after the crash. She had been drinking heavily. An hour after he first approached Rebecca's building, Bardo was back. He buzzed the call box, and once again, Rebecca came rushing down the stairs, excited to see what else fate had in store for her that day. Rebecca returned to the front door to find Bardo standing right here in this very spot. This time, she said something like, "What are you doing here? You're wasting my time. Please leave."
She's somewhat little, she has a kid voice, like sound like a little brat or something. And I was just wasting your time, you know, like you know, I mean, I thought that was very callous thing to say to a fan.
Bardo then tells her he forgot to give her something. He reaches into the plastic bag, pulls out a gun, and shoots her in the chest.
grabbed the door, glanced over the bed, and was wrong, grabbed on the trigger. This. Fourth her blood squirted out. She used to scream.
Thanks for ruining my life.
Bardo ran off and left Rebecca to die. He ran down an alleyway, throwing his yellow shirt, now stained in Rebecca's blood, into a trash bin. He then tossed his copy of The Catcher in the Rye on the roof of a dry cleaner's.
I heard the scream, one very loud, long scream.
I want to live, but I don't know how.
Lying in wait. While lying in wait.
30 minutes later, Rebecca would be pronounced dead at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. She was only 21. Bardo made it all the way back to Tucson, Arizona. He was arrested the following day, wandering aimlessly on the freeway.
Within hours, Robert Bardo confessed to police that he shot and killed Rebecca Schaeffer. He went on trial for first-degree murder in Superior Court in Los Angeles 2 years later.
People at the school did a good job of stopping me from killing myself. They made a mistake because they saved the devil. Now the devil must kill. Is that your notation?
Yes, those are direct quotations from Robert.
Defense played a song from the rock group U2's Joshua Tree album. Until this point in the trial, the defendant had remained composed in the courtroom. But once the song Exit was played, he sang and strummed to the music.
U2's Bono is guilty of a lot of things, but murder isn't one of them. Bardo claimed in court that the U2 song Exit influenced his actions that July morning.
I find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. I feel that Rebecca will not come back as a function of the sentence, but that justice was reasonably done.
Bardo would spend his days in prison drawing pictures of Rebecca along with the who's who of pop and movie stars. His pictures sell for anywhere from $25 to $100. On July 27, 2007, Bardo was stabbed 11 times on his way to breakfast in the maximum security unit at Mule Creek State Prison. He survived the attack. As of 2018, Bardo is serving his life sentence at the Ironwood State Prison in Blythe, California. The prosecutor presiding over the case was none other than Marcia Clark, pre-O.J. murder trial. Clark was responsible for Bardo being put away for life without the possibility of parole.
He had an ongoing and long-standing desire for fame before he ever heard of Rebecca Schaeffer. She became a means to an end for him. He had to justify that means in some way in his own mind, and he rationalized it as a desire to eliminate someone who either was an obsession he couldn't obtain or to eliminate someone whose loss of innocence he felt was impending.
Rebecca's murder would be overshadowed a month later when the Menendez brothers killed their parents only a few short miles from Rebecca's apartment. But Rebecca's legacy would live on in a major way. Shortly after Rebecca's death, all 50 states passed anti-stalking laws, and because of Rebecca's murder, the Driver's Privacy Protection Act was enacted in 1994, preventing the DMV from releasing private information.